When a new student arrives at Hogwarts for the first time, one of the first things they'll experience is the sorting ceremony, a rite of passage in which you're allocated to one of the four Hogwarts houses: Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, or Hufflepuff. And on some level, your house is meant to define the type of person that you are. Gryffindors are brave, Hufflepuffs are loyal, Ravenclaws are smart, and Slytherins are ambitious. At least, that's what everybody says. But where did these ideas actually come from? And are they really accurate, or are they just oversimplified labels that stuck around because they're easy to repeat? Inside the wizarding world, you hear the same stereotypes all the time, from students, teachers, and even the Daily Prophet. And in our own world, the fandom has exaggerated them even more. Hufflepuff becomes the potato farmer house. Ravenclaws are nerds, Slytherins are villains in training, and Gryffindors are reckless heroes. These are easy oversimplifications to use. But if you take a closer look at the books, it becomes clear that it's much more complicated than that. Even the Sorting Hat, the source of it all, admits that sorting isn't a perfect system. In its very first song, it proudly declares, "There's nothing hidden in your head the Sorting Hat can't see, so try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be." Sounds confident, right? And yet, when Harry sits under it, the hat hesitates. He could be in Slytherin, he could be in Gryffindor. The choice is his. Dumbledore later reinforces this when he tells Harry in Chamber of Secrets, "It's our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." So right away, we're told that houses aren't destiny. But still, stereotypes form, and that's because people love labels. Gryffindors are heroes, Slytherins are villains, Ravenclaws are nerds, and Hufflepuffs are leftovers. But what are the true meanings of these Hogwarts houses, and how do the stereotypes differ from reality? Let's dive into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Let's start with Gryffindor. The stereotype is hard to miss. Gryffindors are reckless, glory-chasing daredevils, hot-headed, impulsive, and forever charging headlong into danger without pausing to think. This reputation traces back to Godric Gryffindor himself, not just a founder, but a warrior, duelist, and outspoken champion of Muggleborns in a time when they were widely mistrusted. His legacy wasn't one of quiet diplomacy or cunning strategy, but of meeting problems head-on. And nothing symbolizes that more than the Sword of Gryffindor, the weapon that literally bore his name. And that imagery mattered, because over the centuries it sent a clear message. Gryffindors weren't just thinkers or builders, they were fighters. The house was defined by courage, yes, but also by a fierce willingness to leap into danger and to take up arms when others hesitated. By the time of Harry Potter, the stereotype of Gryffindor as reckless, glory-hungry daredevils wasn't just a caricature, it was the natural extension of the legacy their founder left behind. And no one embodied that more than the Golden Trio. Harry, Ron, and Hermione carried Gryffindor's reputation into the modern age, constantly stumbling into danger, breaking rules, and diving headfirst into chaos. Gryffindor may have become the hero house, but it did so with an undertone of wild, almost reckless bravado. But is that really what Gryffindor is about? Not at all. The house isn't just defined by the reckless pursuit of glory, and true Gryffindor bravery is something deeper. It's moral courage. Neville Longbottom is perhaps the best example of this, as in his very first year, he stands up not to dark wizards, but to his own friends, trying to stop them from sneaking out at night. This is emphasized by Dumbledore when he says, "It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends." That moment isn't about glory or recognition. It's about doing the right thing when it's hard. And even Hermione, the biggest rule follower in the entire series, belongs in Gryffindor for the same reason. She admits it herself in Philosopher's Stone. Books and cleverness, there are more important things, friendship and bravery. And that's the real heart of the house. So while the stereotype paints Gryffindor as reckless heroics, the truth is that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Next, Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff probably gets the worst reputation of them all. The stereotype, they're the house of leftovers. Nice, sure, but bland, forgettable, weak. Even Helga Hufflepuff's own words play into this misunderstanding, as she famously said, "I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same." And while the statement is quite noble at its core, it sort of gave the impression that Hufflepuff just took everyone else's rejects. Historically, Helga Hufflepuff's decision to welcome all students regardless of ability made her house look ordinary compared to the exclusivity of Slytherin or Gryffindor. And over time, that openness was twisted into the idea that Hufflepuff was where everyone left over ended up. In a wizarding world filled with Gryffindor drama and Slytherin scandals, Hufflepuff simply didn't make headlines, which only reinforced the idea that they didn't matter. And then the fandom ran with it. Online quizzes turned Hufflepuff into the default house if you didn't fit anywhere else. Fans joked about them being farmers or the potato house, and even J.K. Rowling's admitted that Hufflepuff often got unfair treatment from readers. But these perceived weaknesses surrounding Hufflepuff are actually strengths. The Sorting Hat describes them as just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. And when you look at Cedric Diggory, you see exactly what that means. Harry himself says in Goblet of Fire, Cedric was the kind of person who you couldn't find it in yourself to dislike. Cedric is brave, fair, humble, and respected by everyone. A true Hufflepuff. And when the call came to stay and fight in the Battle of Hogwarts, nearly the entire house stayed. Professor Sprout led them herself, even bringing her army of plants into battle. Hufflepuffs may not chase glory, but when it mattered most, they stood firm. The stereotype says weak. The reality, they're resilient, loyal, and the backbone of Hogwarts. Next up, Ravenclaw. The stereotype here is pretty clear too. Ravenclaws are nerds. They're elitist, book-obsessed, and care more about exams than real life. Inside the wizarding world, their own culture reinforced this. Their common room entrance requires solving a riddle, which makes them seem exclusive. Other students mock them as know-it-alls, and Cho Chang, one of the few Ravenclaws we get to know, is portrayed as high-achieving but somewhat distant, which doesn't exactly help. Historically, Rowena Ravenclaw was remembered as the wisest of the founders. She designed Hogwarts' moving staircases and prized intelligence above all. In the fandom, Ravenclaw became the smart house. If you didn't want to be a Gryffindor or a Slytherin, you picked Ravenclaw as the quirky outsider choice. Merchandise leaned into the stereotype, and quizzes made it all about grades and trivia. For years, Ravenclaw was the house of nerds. But in reality, Ravenclaw isn't just about memorizing facts or being smart for the sake of it. It's about creativity. It's about seeing the world differently. The Sorting Hat puts it like this: or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Take Luna Lovegood, for example. She's eccentric and believes in creatures others laugh at. But she also sees truths nobody else does. Her intelligence is imaginative, not academic. There's also Professor Flitwick, the head of Ravenclaw House. A charms master and dueling champion, he combines learning with real-world skill. And that's Ravenclaw in a nutshell. Wit, creativity, and originality. Not nerds, visionaries. Last up, we've got Slytherin. This is the big one. The stereotype is that Slytherins are evil. They're dark wizards in training. And again, it's not hard to see why people think this. Salazar Slytherin himself left Hogwarts over his obsession with blood purity. The legend of the Chamber of Secrets haunted the school for centuries. Voldemort, the darkest wizard of all, was a Slytherin. And then there are the Malfoys, Crabs, Goyles, and other wizarding families, all of them feeding the image of Slytherin as cruel and elitist. Historically, the Slytherin stereotype was born from Salazar's ideology. His belief that only pure blood should be admitted to Hogwarts created centuries of mistrust, and his hidden chamber left a literal monster lurking in the school. By Harry's time, Slytherin's entire identity had been reduced to evil, even though its founders' original ideals were meant to ensure survival and strength. Other houses reinforced the stereotype. Gryffindors, especially, painted Slytherins as their enemies. Even professors weren't free of bias. McGonagall herself admitted she had doubts about them. And then, at the Battle of Hogwarts, when most of Slytherin House fled, it looked like the stereotype had been confirmed. In the fandom, the image stuck even harder. Because we see the story through Harry's eyes, and his enemies are almost always Slytherins, the house became the villain option. Early online culture joked that picking Slytherin meant you were basically signing up to be a Death Eater. But again, the reality is different. The Sorting Hat describes them as those cunning folk who use any means to achieve their ends. And while that may sound sinister, it's important to remember here that ambition itself isn't evil. There are plenty of Slytherins we can look to as examples of this. Horace Slughorn, for example, is ambitious, yes, but also kind and loyal to his students. He also comes back to fight Voldemort, showing his courage in the end. And then there's Snape, a Slytherin through and through, cunning, ambitious, secretive, but also brave, loyal in his own way, and ultimately self-sacrificing. Dumbledore once told Harry, "Sometimes I think we sought too soon," and it's worth remembering that Merlin himself, the most famous wizard in history, was said to be a Slytherin. Hardly a house of villains alone. Slytherins aren't evil, they're survivors, they're leaders, and while their ambition can be dangerous, it can also be great. It's not hard to see how these stereotypes formed in the first place. Gryffindors got the reputation of being reckless because so many of them ran headfirst into danger. Hufflepuffs looked weak because they welcomed everyone. Ravenclaws looked nerdy because they loved riddles and academics, and Slytherins looked evil because of Voldemort and the Malfoys. But the reality is so much richer. Sirius Black said it best in Order of the Phoenix. We've all got both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. And the same goes for houses. They highlight tendencies, not destinies. And while the stereotypes may be simple, the reality is complex. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real lesson Hogwarts was always trying to teach us. That no one is defined by just one word, one trait, or one label. Anyway, that's it for today's video. What do you think? What are some traits of these houses that I may have missed? Let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and to forget to live